Why is it that even in a crowded room, surrounded by people laughing and talking, you can still feel completely alone? That gnawing feeling in your chest, the one that whispers you don't quite belong here, the one that has you constantly scanning faces, wondering if anyone notices you standing there, slightly apart from everyone else. It's a peculiar kind of pain, isn't it? This feeling of being left out. Not quite rejected, but not quite included either. Suspended in that uncomfortable in-between space where you're physically present, but emotionally disconnected. I want you to know something important. That feeling, it's far more universal than you realize. Today, we're going to unpack why you feel left out, what's happening in your mind when that feeling strikes, and most importantly, what you can actually do about it. Because this isn't just about feeling better in the moment. This is about transforming your relationship with yourself and others in a way that changes everything. Let's start with the truth that might surprise you. That feeling of being left out, it's not just in your head, it's wired into your biology. Human beings evolved as social creatures. For our ancestors, being excluded from the group wasn't just uncomfortable, it was dangerous, potentially fatal. Our brains developed sophisticated systems to detect even the slightest hint of social rejection because evolutionarily speaking, our survival depended on it. Think about it. When you feel left out, your body responds almost as if facing a physical threat. Your heart rate increases, your muscles tense, your mind races, analyzing and reanalyzing social cues, desperately trying to figure out what's wrong. This isn't weakness, this is your ancient survival mechanism at work. But here's where things get complicated. This same system that evolved to keep you safe, it can become hypersensitive, especially if you've experienced meaningful rejection in your past. Maybe you were the kid who waited to be picked for teams, watching as others were chosen before you. Maybe you were the teenager who saw the social media posts of parties you weren't invited to. Or maybe you're the adult who smiles and nods in group conversation, but never quite feels like your contributions matter as much as everyone else. Each of these experiences leaves a mark. They create what psychologists call rejection sensitivity, a heightened alertness to any sign that you might be excluded. And once that sensitivity develops, you begin to see potential rejection everywhere, even in places where it doesn't exist. Pause for a moment. Think about the last time you felt left out. Really recall that situation. Now ask yourself, how much of what you felt was based on concrete evidence that people were actively excluding you? And how much was based on your interpretation of subtle social cues filtered through your past experience? I'm not suggesting the feeling isn't real. It absolutely is. But understanding where it comes from gives you power over it. Because here's what's happening. When you feel left out, your brain shifts into a defensive posture. You become hyper-focused on yourself, your discomfort, your awkwardness, your perceived inadequacies. This self-focus makes it nearly impossible to be genuinely present with others. And this creates a painful cycle. Feeling left out causes you to retreat inward, which makes meaningful connection even harder, which reinforces the feeling of being left out. It's exhausting, isn't it? This constant vigilance, this persistent feeling of standing just outside the circle, nose pressed against the glass, watching others connect with an ease that seems impossible for you. But it doesn't have to be this way. Let me share with you 4 powerful strategies that can transform this experience. Not overnight, real change rarely happens that way, but gradually and permanently. The first strategy might surprise you. Stop trying to belong everywhere. Yes, you heard me correctly. Stop trying to belong everywhere. One of the biggest mistakes we make is believing we should feel a sense of belonging in every social situation. That's not just unrealistic, it's unnecessary. The truth is, meaningful belonging is selective. It's not about being accepted by everyone. It's about finding your people, those rare individuals with whom you can be your authentic self without apology or explanation. When you release the expectation that you should fit in everywhere, something remarkable happens. The desperate energy that often accompanies social interaction, that silent pleading to be included, begins to fade, and in its place comes a calm confidence that allows you to show up more authentically. Because here's the paradox. The more you chase acceptance, the more elusive it becomes. But when you focus instead on authentic connection with a few right people, belonging often follows naturally. The second strategy involves a subtle but powerful shift in focus. Move from self-consciousness to other consciousness. When you feel left out, your attention fixates on yourself, how you're coming across, what others might be thinking of you, all your perceived shortcomings. This internal spotlight makes everything worse. Instead, practice deliberately shifting your focus outward. Become genuinely curious about the people around you. Ask questions that matter. Listen, not just for your turn to speak, but with the intention to understand. This shift doesn't just make social interaction easier, it transforms the experience entirely. Because when you're genuinely interested in others, you stop performing and start connecting. The irony is that in focusing less on being included, you become more includable. The third strategy requires some deeper inner work. Challenge your narrative about why you feel left out. We all carry stories about ourselves and our place in the social world. For many who struggle with feeling left out, these stories contain themes like, I'm fundamentally different, I'm somehow defective, or people eventually realize I don't belong. These narratives aren't facts. Their interpretation, often formed during painful early experiences and reinforced over time until they feel like unshakable truths, but they can be challenged. Start by getting curious about your own story. When did you first start feeling this way? What experiences shaped this belief? And most importantly, what evidence exists that contradicts this narrative? Because I guarantee there are contradictions. Times when you did feel deeply connected, relationships where you are valued exactly as you are, moments when belonging came naturally, without effort or pretense. Those experiences aren't exceptions to the rule. They're glimpses of what's possible when you stop letting an outdated narrative dictate your social reality. The fourth strategy is perhaps the most counterintuitive. Instead of waiting to be included, become the includer. Think about it. How many people in any given social situation are feeling exactly what you're feeling? That uncertainty, that question of whether they truly belong. When you take the initiative to include others, to ask the quiet person a question, to create space for someone on the periphery, to be the one who reaches out, something profound happens. Not only do you create connection for someone else, but you also shift your own internal state. You move from powerless to empowered, from passive recipient to active creator of the social experience. And in that shift, the feeling of being left out often dissolves, not because everyone suddenly includes you, but because you've stopped waiting for inclusion and started creating it instead. I want to acknowledge something important here. These strategies aren't always easy to implement, especially if feeling left out has been a lifelong struggle. There will be setbacks, moments when old patterns reassert themselves, times when that familiar pain returns with full force. This isn't a linear journey, it's a practice. And like any practice, it gets easier with time and repetition. But here's what I can promise you. Each time you choose authentic connection over performance, curiosity over self-consciousness, empowerment over passivity, you're not just changing a moment, you're rewiring neural pathways. You're creating new possibilities for how you experience yourself in relation to others. And gradually, that feeling of being on the outside looking in begins to fade, not because the world has changed, but because you have. Remember this, belonging isn't just something you feel, it's something you create, first within yourself, by accepting all parts of who you are, and then with others through genuine connection. You don't need to contort yourself to fit into spaces that weren't designed for you. You don't need everyone's approval or inclusion to validate your worth. What you need, what we all need, is the courage to show up authentically, the wisdom to find your people, and the patience to allow real connection to unfold in its own time. The next time that feeling of being left out washes over you, I want you to pause, take a breath, and remind yourself, this feeling is information, but it isn't your identity. You are not someone who doesn't belong. You are someone learning a new way of belonging, one that honors your unique nature while creating space for genuine connection. And that kind of belonging, it's worth every uncomfortable moment, every risk of rejection, every step outside your comfort zone. Because on the other side of that discomfort is a life where you no longer feel left out, not because everyone includes you, but because you finally included yourself.